All right. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming back. Give yourselves a round of applause, folks. Let's stay woke. All right. Very important conversation as always. Here, the Global Program Manager for Google News Initiative, here to talk to us about 3 trends to grow ad revenue in 2023. Let's welcome Tina Shao. Please give her a round of applause, if you would.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar faces, and so great. It's been a couple of months since Puerto Rico, so excited to come back and talk to you guys about ad revenue today. I'm Tina from the Google News Initiative, and I also always love to bring up this slide to show all of the wonderful partnerships and collaborations we've had with the NNPA in the last 4 years, starting all the way from 2019 up until today. Starting from the ad lab all the way up. So if you are a lab participant, could you raise your hand? Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you guys all. So really great to see all of the progress that we've made and being able to continue this partnership. So I also want to shout out my colleague in the audience. You probably know her as well, Casey Palaniuk. We're from the Google News Initiative again, and the Google News Initiative works to make quality information accessible to everyone. And so I think it means a lot to come to a group like the Black Press to be able to talk about how can we really make information available to everyone online, but also make it sustainable from a revenue perspective. So today we'll talk about 3 groups of places you can look to increase your ad revenue. Ad revenue always starts with impressions. So where it starts with your audience. And so that's why we'll talk about search and newsletters, and we'll also talk about some interesting opportunities. So first, one of the biggest trends that we're seeing online is that we are searching more specifically. People are looking for more information that's relevant to their lives, and so what that looks like is this graph right here, where you'll see that red bar on the top. About 36% of news traffic is now from search. This is actually a little bit of an increase from about 34% last year, and part of that is driven by social. So you can see that social is dipping. This is actually primarily driven by drops in Facebook and Twitter. And recently, 2 weeks ago, there was the release of the Reuters Institute's 2023 news report, and that also found that about 40% of audiences are avoiding the news. And so what we see from these traffic trends and that information is that we're being pickier about what information we want. If I want information, I don't want someone to necessarily tell me it. I will look for it myself. And so that's what's kind of resulting in a little bit of an uptick. The other thing that's really interesting is seeing the kinds of searches that are growing. So up to 400% growth in certain specific search terms. So things like pans for cooking fish, or formal attire for, things like this. And so what that means is we're actually when we search on our phones, we ask Google things that we wouldn't ask our family, our friends, people we know in our community. And what that means now is that we're actually even more curious. We're looking for more specific answers and more specific solutions. So a really great opportunity here in how you can bring it back to your news organization is to answer specific questions and help with decisions. So this was something that I believe the Savannah Tribune and I talked a little bit about at Puerto Rico, which was the Savannah Bananas, which I think is the best sports team name of all time. But going on Google Trends and seeing what people are searching for the Savannah Bananas. So the first 3 searches that we see here that are growing are Savannah Bananas jersey, tickets, and stadium. So that means that people are looking for information around where can I buy a jersey, when are tickets available, when are they playing, where is the stadium. Those are the kinds of questions that people are now searching for online. And so what you can do there is create a page on your website that answers those questions. And that's really valuable ad space. Imagine you're a sports retailer or something like a Dick's Sporting Goods, right? Like, you would want to advertise against that page because it's getting so much traffic and it's getting your most engaged audience. So one thing you'll notice if you do go on Google Trends, you'll see this word breakout. This means that the search traffic has grown so much that we don't have a reference point for how large it is. It's usually around like at least 5,000% higher than what it used to be. So that means that people are actively looking for that information, but there might not be that many publishers that have produced that information yet. So another thing to think about with this is helping with decisions. So a lot of news publishers we're seeing are looking more into affiliate revenue. So how can you buy things but get information from a publisher to help you make that decision? It's kind of a form of service journalism in its own. And so things like, what kind of books should I read? Or where can I buy a Savannah Bananas jersey? What kinds of jerseys are there? Those are the kinds of questions that people are looking to answer online. So, and I'm bringing this back up from Puerto Rico again as well, but if you are interested, I can connect you with Ashley Edwards, who does trainings on Google Trends, and also to be able to set up a web page just for your publication to show you what the local searches in your area are. So the best part about Google Trends is that you can not only search for the terms themselves, but you can see what people in that specific area are searching. So obviously, first of the Savannah Bananas, most of the folks that are searching are from Georgia, but for some reason, there's a lot of folks that are searching from Indiana. So that way you can get a sense too of where people are looking and what they're looking for. So this is actually out of order, but I will go into YouTube, and it was so interesting to hear Dr. Chavis and Darren talk a lot about listening and learning. So one thing that's really interesting that we're seeing for ad revenue and podcasting is that Black listeners are very different in terms of they stand out by their needs and why they listen to the news. Mainly, Black listeners, first of all, are more likely to listen to the news. They're about 30% more likely than white listeners or Hispanic listeners. So about 76% of Black listeners say they hear the news on a podcast that they listen to. And surprisingly, younger folks listen to podcasts more. So you're seeing about 55% of those that are 18 to 34 have listened to a podcast in the last year versus 19% of 55 and over. And what's most interesting is the reasons why people listen. And the first reason that Black listeners listen is to learn. 61% of Black podcast listeners listen to learn. 41% listen to hear other opinions, and 40% listen to stay up to date. So what's really interesting about this is if you look at white listeners, a lot of them actually, the number one reason they listen is to have something to listen to when they're doing something, or if they want to be entertained, versus listening to learn. And so this is actually also reflected in the types of podcasts that Black listeners listen to. About half of Black listeners listen to 4 types of podcasts. They listen to information about race and ethnicity, they listen to comedy, they listen to relationships, money and finance. So those are the 4 biggest topics, and pop culture and entertainment. Those are the 5 big topics that they listen to, and 50% of Black listeners listen to those topics, and they stand out very significantly for those topics.
Would you repeat those topics again?
Yes, it's race and ethnicity, comedy, money and finance, pop culture and entertainment, and I'm missing one. Relationships, thank you, self-help and relationships. So if you have any news content, if you're not a radio publisher, or if you don't create any video content, something that we're also seeing is people turning their articles and other things that they've written in the past into podcasts. So you could get a journalist of yours to record an article that you've already written. The format is a little bit different and it can be tailored, but that's a really great place to start because you already have that content. You can actually go through things that have been really successful for you in the past and turn that written content into audio content. And what we're seeing, and this is a continued trend in podcasting, is that host-read podcast CPMs, they average about $25. That is a huge amount of money for a CPM compared to display, compared to other types of advertising. And so to give you a reference point, direct CPMs for display tend to sell around $5 to $10, and then programmatic tends to sell around $1 to $2. So the fact that this is, host-read CPMs are averaging $25, that's a really, really high price, and that's really great. And this is actually a very exciting announcement that YouTube had about 3 months ago, which is that you can now upload podcasts to YouTube. In the past, you couldn't upload audio files to YouTube without a video file attached to it, but now you can just upload straight to YouTube, and it will also go onto YouTube Music. So if people are if people pay for YouTube Music, they will also be able to get your podcasts. And going back to the reasons why Black listeners listen to podcasts, the two biggest reasons when it comes to news is explaining the news and recapping or summarizing the news. So again, if you have any content like that you've already written for, you can include it, you can turn it into a podcast and then upload it to YouTube. And that would make you eligible for the monetization. And so lastly, we'll talk about newsletters. How many of you guys have checked your email today? Raise your hand. It's about almost everyone in the room. So 80% of you guys have newsletters. And what is great about email is that we check it every day. 99% of people who have an email check it every day. And 47% of people that are under 35 check email news first thing in the morning. I used to work at ABC News. I worked in business strategy there. We used to always be so sensitive about what people were doing in the morning, because what we wanted them to do in the morning was watch the TV news, watch Robin Roberts. But now that's changing. People are checking their phone first thing in the morning to get their news, and so that's a really valuable place for you to be, and advertisers know that. Advertisers know that newsletter subscribers are some of the most engaged audiences, because newsletter subscribers are 10 times more likely to pay for a subscription or donate to your publication if you have a reader revenue. But they also know that they're much more engaged. They read more articles, they go on more things, and part of that is, the best part about the email newsletter is that it's in their inbox. For you as a publisher, that's kind of your way of providing your news on their turf. They're not coming to they're not coming to your website, you're coming to them. And so that's why it's a much more engaged audience. So a really great opportunity you can take advantage of here when it comes to ad revenue is to send out a survey to your newsletter readers. Find out what their demographic information is. You know, you can ask them, what is your gender? What is your race? What is, what interests do you have? Things like that. That's all really valuable information for advertisers, especially for advertisers that are targeting certain segments. So if you are working with your direct advertisers, your local businesses, and say they want to reach women 18 to 34, which was ABC's favorite segment, because those are the women that are buying a lot of things, that's the kind of information that if you say, I have this relationship newsletter, and I have 5,000 women that are 18 to 34 that read my newsletter every week. That's a really good piece of information to give an advertiser, and they're definitely going to want to be able to target further. So that's why if you can provide that information, all you have to do is send out that survey to your newsletter list, and you can tell them, this helps me sell better ads so that I can keep providing this newsletter to you. So, as a recap, when it comes to search, we're searching more specifically. And so the opportunity there is you can answer very specific questions and help with decisions and turn that into a valuable ad space. Second is Black listeners are more likely to listen to the news, and because this is such a lucrative space, this is a really great time and opportunity to take advantage of that by uploading podcasts to YouTube. And lastly, we check email every day. So that's a really valuable space for advertisers, and you can use that to your advantage by sending out a survey to your readers and finding out more about them so you can provide that information back to your advertisers. So here is the perfect slide if you want to take a picture to take all of this information home. But that's the 3 trends to grow ad revenue, and I can now take any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, there we go. Hands. I'm gonna go right. So this one first. We'll move around. Actually, ladies first. Quick questions, folks, please. Thank you.
Tracy with the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder newspaper. I'm wondering, like when you talk about the time frame when young people are looking, what was that time frame looking like
Which time frame for?
for people that were looking at their emails?
As in what
newsletters.
part of the morning they were listening
Yes.
to? I think it's any time before noon.
Okay.
I'm running.
But you can also kind of test to see what time people are opening your newsletters more at. So you can send, for example, you can send one segment of your audience an email at, say, 9 a.m., and then another segment at 10 a.m., and then see who opens it more. And then that's kind of how you can figure out what the best time to send a newsletter is.
You're giving out a lot of information. Is it available electronically for us to receive later? Because I noticed even some of the young folk couldn't catch it fast enough. That's my first question. My second question is...
You speaking for the young people?
I am young. Oh, I'm sorry, Gary Hunter of the Shot News and the Detroit Times. Because our curiosity to know this stuff is great, to retain it might not be as great. And then my next phase is, even though you do all of that, Google and other spaces say they're supporting black businesses now in black press. How do we tell what's legitimate from Google or what's not? And is there a physical person we can call to get advertising or either some of those revenues that they say that you're giving out? Thank you.
So we'll make sure the slides are available. We'll definitely send those out, and we can actually update a page that we have specifically for the NNPA for resources that would be helpful for you guys. What do you mean? Just trying to understand a little bit more. What do you mean by like legitimate sources or not? Are you meaning on search specifically, or?
There's a lot of advertising, you know, and anybody on emails, you get these emails either the search is saying for black businesses has been going out ever since the pandemic. Anybody else get those where they saying they given to black business or given to black media or different things? How is there? I know there's a lot of scams. How do we tell from Google, or is there a Google way to find out if it's a legitimate search? And does Google support black businesses?
I'm coming.
Oh, I got you. I'm closer.
You gonna get there quicker than me? Okay, go ahead.
So I think there's sort of two pieces there. There are definitely a lot of scams, and we hear that not just from the black press, but from just news publishers in general, small businesses. That I don't have a great answer for, because we can't keep on top of every single scam. And now, especially with AI, they're just proliferating like crazy. We're dealing with it ourselves. What I can say is you can always gut check them with us. I work specifically with Ron Burke really closely on the entire partnership between Google and the NNPA. So if you ever have a specific question, not to throw Ron under the bus, but you can ask him. But then we also work with Ron to make sure that we Google are advertising with the black press. So we commit millions of dollars every single year to advertise with you all, our agencies. That's not my job technically, but I facilitate with our advertising teams who are our buyers, and they are also directly in contact with Ron. And so that's how we sort of, it's not a perfect feeder, but that's sort of how we manually feed our advertising through to the black press. So does that answer your question? Sort of. Yeah, so we advertise, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but at least our ad buying team who spends, if you see a cybersecurity ad at Google, they are working directly, our agencies are working directly with Ron and the black press to make sure a portion of that advertising gets spent among the black press. And then in terms of other funding, we have a session actually tomorrow about Transformation Tech, which is a program that we announced beginning of June, where if you go through this sort of 3-month tech intensive training, you'll be eligible for $20,000 to support your implementation needs. Yeah, right. So check out the session tomorrow, highlight. But yes, it's a 3-month commitment, but then you'll be eligible for $20,000 to implement.
All right, yes.
So Tina and Casey, I'm wondering, when I start asking a question on Google, how it almost finishes my question and I haven't put it out there. So are you guys reading our minds some way?
Janice, I wouldn't do this job if I could. So I'll talk a little bit about how search works. So basically, every day and at every minute, there is a Google crawler that goes on the internet and downloads web pages. And then Google downloads it so they can understand what's on this page. Is it this text? Is it this image? Those kinds of things. They store all that information in a database. And then when you search for something, Google says, okay, I think this is the thing that you want. And so that's how Google works. So that's the first part. The second part is we also have all of this data on all of the things that people have searched every single day. So that's Google Trends. We showed you a little bit of that. And so based on that, that's how the autocompletes are guessed. So part of it is, one part is kind of also what you have searched previously. So I always show people what I see on Google because all of my autocomplete things are things about dogs, because I always ask Google, can my dog eat this? And so that's why I always have that as the autocomplete. So it's partially how you might have searched in the past, but also what other people have searched for. So sometimes if it's a very common topic that people have questions about, i.e., can my dog eat this? It will say things like, can my dog eat watermelon? Can my dog eat carrots? Can my dog eat whatever it is? Because people will always ask Google that question. Great question.
Yes. William Smothers from Speaking Out News, Huntsville, Alabama. I would like for you to address, we have, on our website, we have impressions versus clicks. What do you look at most? What have the greatest gravitas? The impressions that come to the website or the clicks on that ad?
Quick question there. When you say what do I look at? What do you mean by what do we look at?
Okay, for instance, one of our clients is public supermarkets, and we get weekly reports. It may be 80,000 impressions on their ad on our banner, but also we got the clicks too. So I'm asking, from Google perspective, what is the most value? Do you look on your search engine? Is it more the impressions or the clicks on that ad?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's a little bit of an it depends situation. Search volume is a very interesting thing to think about, because when you look at an impression versus a click on search, a click means that someone looked at that and they're like, oh, that answers my question, so they clicked on it. So that's why you want to have as high of a click-through rate as you possibly can, because that means that people go to Google, they ask their question, and then you answered their question. So that's why the click-through rate is important. However, the click-through rate is not super high. I don't think I've seen really a click-through rate higher than 1% to 2% for most publishers. So if it looks really low, that's really not, it's not a big deal, I would say. Like, you're still getting a lot of traffic, even if that number is very low. And if you go on Search Console, you can see how much of your traffic comes from certain search terms. So for example, you could see, why is everybody coming to my webpage today? Is it because I published an article about the Supreme Court ruling? So it'll show you what people are searching and then how they got to your article.
Thanks, Tina, and Casey, thanks for throwing me under the bus. I'm just kidding. No, we're very appreciative of the relationship with Google. But Tina, maybe you can expand on something. I know that for Google Trends, we have, I think, Dallas Examiner, Cincinnati Herald, they have their own trend search page. The one thing that the publishers may want to know is this search what everybody is searching for, or can it be defined on what Black America is searching for?
Yeah, great question. So it doesn't have demographic information, so it doesn't have, say, what Black folks are searching for, it doesn't have what women are searching for, it doesn't have that level of granularity. That's partially because that would also be, I think, a huge privacy question as well. But it does have things that are less personal, so things like geography. So if I want to see what everybody in Nashville is searching, you can look at that. You can also see at what time frame people have searched it for. So my favorite example that I always use is in DC. If you search for cherry blossoms for Google Trends, everyone starts searching in March. And then it goes all the way up like this. And so something we talked about last time too was Juneteenth. Everyone starts searching for Juneteenth in May. So that's why you can, if you want to think about how you can kind of improve your traffic based on just timing, you can kind of just shift your publish dates up a little bit. And then you'll get that whole swell versus if you were to post like halfway through the swell.
Hi, over here. Hi, Casey and Tina, right here. So I'm Brandy. I'm a publicist. This is more on like the advertisement side. Answer as you can. I'm curious. So similar to like YouTube, I work with content creators. They have the MCNs that aid in like pulling advertisements to their platform and like the whole monetization part. Now, when it comes to publishers and different platforms, I heard you say you guys are like you have your ad teams that work on pulling ads to these publications. One I know, Ice Cream Combos. They talked great things about their relationship with Google and how they've gotten ads. I'm curious. I saw there was a lack on the MCN side with like black-owned MCNs or companies that are prioritizing black ads or advertisements that target toward the multicultural demos and the advertisements that just we would most likely engage with. So I'm curious, like with your advertisement teams on the other side, do you guys have like a black-owned agency that you work with or like a specific company that kind of generates those ads for the black publications? I know that's fully loaded.
I mean, it's a great question. What I would say to that is this is definitely like, especially if you're in the more publicity advertising world, something that we would love to see more of is ad creatives that have people of color in them. Actually, Facebook did a study that they found that when there is a Latino person in an ad and a Latino person sees it, they're 80% more likely to want to buy whatever the thing in the ad is. So that's kind of where it stems from the advertiser of what kind of creative they're creating. But I think as Google, the way that I see it is it's more important to share that information with advertisers so then they invest in that so that becomes their ad creative. Since that's generally where the ad creative originates from. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I think I'll do some research after this to figure out how to like get in contact with some of those advertisement agencies that focus on promoting black content.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing that I would say more on the publisher side is that if you are on Google Ad Manager, is to create groups of your ads and tag them and provide more information. So you can write a description when you create those groups. And so you can say this section, the relationship section of my website is really popular with black women. I have 70%, I'm making it up, but like that's the kind of information that's really valuable to an advertiser. You can do that for both direct and programmatic ads, because when you're in direct, you can bring that up in a conversation with your advertiser, and so that's one way to try to encourage more of that creative. Great question.
Josh Barker, New York Amsterdam News. It's refreshing for us to be able to see our publication show up as top search when you search for news, but I don't see too many other black publications on there. What can publishers do, digital editors do, to make sure that our stories come up with our logo on that top spot for news, in news search rather?
Yeah, great question. So for context on this, when you search for something on Google, if it's a news search, there's kind of two places where it could show up. What you're referring to is the top news block. So that's sometimes when there's a big news story and your publication is featured there as the authoritative source. The other place that they could show up is as blue links. So that's right below. So that's all of your other searches. There's also the news tab. So that's Google News. That is technically a separate product, but it's also linked within Google. So those are kind of all the places where your publication could show up. The first thing I would say is set up your publication in Publisher Center if you haven't already. You likely have if you have shown up on Google News. If you are not on Google News, you probably need to set it up in Publisher Center. But you can actually improve. Publisher Center doesn't necessarily help you show up in search better, but it helps you be able to control how your brand looks. So you can like upload a logo, you can like change the header of your publication. Those are kind of the little things that will make it appear more like visually appealing so that people click on it more. The second thing I would say is that search takes a long time to build. Luckily, you guys are all super historic legacy news organizations that people have gone to and trusted for information. So when Google looks at information on the internet, they look at 4 criteria to see if to assess what kind of provider that information is. So those 4 things are experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Publishers in particular do really well with authoritativeness, which is whether people come to you for a piece of information. So for example, if I search, what should I bring to my passport appointment? You probably want to go to the government website versus a travel influencer's site. So you can use that as an example to understand authoritativeness, but that's generally one place where you guys do really well. And so if you report on subjects that people come to you for, you're more likely to probably show up in that box. And then the one that for that ranking that does really well is trustworthiness. And news organizations in general do very well with this. So if you have pages about your journalists, who are your journalists? What do they cover? When was the last time you updated your bio page on your website? Those are pieces of information that Google also takes into account when they try to understand how trustworthy is this source? Who are the people that are providing this information? Why are they qualified to provide this information? So for example, like on medical websites, Google looks to see if they have credentials. So do they have an MD? Do they have a master's in some kind of biology or science if that's what they're reporting on? So that's like an example where it's important to make sure your journalists' about pages are updated, because that's how Google understands who's writing this article.
I'm coming.
Great day. I'm Tristan from Reading with a Rapper. I know a lot of this information you're giving us is great, but we're looking for tangible things to take home with us. How can we use BARD to use and give us systems? A little bit about BARD, that's a part of Google. Is there a competitor to chat, if I'm not mistaken, chat? But how can we use that interface to give us systems and processes and structure?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. Right now I will say AI is a very hot and changing topic. Literally the information we know about AI changes every day at Google. And part of that is also seeing how people are using services like BARD. That's also how we're understanding how AI works and also what people expect from AI. What I would say is that generally AI is really good for summarizing. That's like one of the best things it can do. Obviously, there's been a lot of issues already that people have had with generating information that's incorrect or false. And so I think for where we're at right now, the best use for BARD is to summarize things. So for example, if you do an interview, you can actually just run all of the text through BARD, and then it will give you a summary of what you talked about in that interview. You can do that for your other content as well. So if you have articles that are longer, you can use BARD to generate a summary. So I think that's like a really safe way to use BARD right now, or any LLM, just because, again, until we understand how these tools work a little bit more, I think it's better to err on the side of caution, since they could provide incorrect information.
All right, right here.
Hi, Tina. Sonny Messiah Giles, Houston Defender Network,
Hello.
Houston's leading black information source. Got to put my commercial in there, y'all. Okay, so with that, a lot of us have, you talked about Google search. And when you look at searching for our entities, oftentimes the information, we talk to Google and say we want to update it. They tell us they're going to update it, but it doesn't get updated. So who do we talk to? Where do we go? How do we make it happen? Because they constantly say, oh yeah, we're going to put your social icons up. They've been approved, but they don't get put up. And we've been doing this dance for about a year now. So I just need to know who and where and what do I do to get this fixed.
Let's chat after. I definitely want to
But
understand
there are a lot of us in this room having the same problems.
That's okay. I have a very full, empty inbox, so I'm more than happy to kind of figure out where the best person for you guys to chat to is. I think for these things in particular, sometimes they're more specific. So if you have like a specific issue, definitely want to look at it just so that we can understand it a little bit more, make sure it's going to the right team.
I think this, though, and you can survey the room, I think this is a common problem that many of us in this room are experiencing, so that's why I posed the question. So if there's a general answer or response, I'd ask you to share with the whole group so we can all go about updating our information. Because search, as you pointed out, is key.
Yeah, just making sure I understand. So when are you saying, what are you inputting to get it updated on Google? Or what are you trying to get updated?
So when you go to search and you put in Houston Defender, or you put in Philadelphia Tribune, or any of us in this room, the information comes up, but in the box that you can get approval for getting your icons, your social media icons, they will say, you'll send in an inquiry and say, can I add my social media icons? And they say yes, but then it doesn't happen. So the question I'm asking is, who can we call or contact to make sure those changes are made once Google has already approved it?
Yeah, is this via Google My Business, or is this for like search results about your publication?
Both, because we've gone both routes in an effort to try to figure out which is the best route. So that's why I'm asking you, what is the best route to get that done?
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking so many questions is because I'm just trying to make sure I understand where it's going to.
I do understand.
Because they're all different teams, right? So Google My Business is one team, search is another team. So that's why it depends a lot on the specific situation.
We'll talk offline, because I don't want to
Yeah, totally.
That's yeah,
yeah, totally.
Okay, we'll talk offline. Once we get the answer to this, I will share with everybody in this room.
Sounds good.
Coming to the other side. Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go here first. I'm doing this in order. Bear with me. I'm trying to keep the order. We got one more after.
Good afternoon. My name is Clifton Kirkman from the Telegram News in Detroit. Can we go back to when you were speaking about the podcast and the publishers? Is that something that individually each journalist can do? You were talking about how we can upload it ourselves.
Yeah.
So would that be specifically to the journalist or to the publication as a whole?
Yeah, so you can create a YouTube channel for your publication, and then that's where you would upload everything. So you can create specific playlists around whichever shows you have, so you can post them in chronological order, or if you have like a long form podcast story, you can post it in whatever the episodic order is. But you can just create a channel for your publication and then upload everything there.
Do Google Podcasts and YouTube Podcasts interface? That's still two separate things?
So
'Cause
Google,
y'all own YouTube,
yes,
right?
Google Podcast was sunsetted so that YouTube Podcast could be born.
So whatever's on Google Podcasts is now on YouTube
Yes,
Podcast.
yeah.
Got it, okay.
Good afternoon, Niele Anderson with LA Sentinel. What's the best day, or is there a best day to drop a podcast? And what's the average time spent listening?
I don't know the answer to the second one, so I will find out for you. But I would say this really depends on what kind of podcast you have. There's so many different kinds of podcasts. Like if you have a daily podcast versus if you have a weekly podcast, I think it also really depends on the topic. So for example, this is one of my favorite stories from Google. We had one publisher who had a beer column, and they were publishing the beer column at 10 a.m. on Saturday because that's when the print publication went out. They then shifted the publication to Friday at 4, and they started seeing like a 20% increase in page views. And so that's why it really depends on the topic. And when I asked the publisher, he's a Quebec paper, I was like, why did you shift the time? And he's like, do you drink beer on Saturdays at 10 a.m.? Because I hope not. And so that's kind of what you want to think about when you're posting is what time would someone want that information? So for example, that's why morning newsletters do so well, because when you wake up in the morning, that's the information you want. So I would think about it that way because it really just depends based on whatever the topic and audience is.
All right. If there are no other burning questions, let's thank Tina. Give her a round of applause. Let's thank Casey, who made a cameo. Thank you, Casey. And they'll definitely be, thank you. Let's give them both a round. Let's Google a round of applause. Folks, we are early. We're a little bit early, which is good, so we don't have to rush next door to lunch. Dr. Chavis has some closing remarks. We do have another bit of news. Dr. King's last surviving sibling, Christine King Ferris, has passed away today as well. So we want to keep the King family lifted up in prayer. Dr. Chavis.
Thank you. First, I want to say something about the Google News Initiative. There are a lot of groups that purport to help the black press. And we welcome all kind of public pronouncements and those who actually follow through. But I don't want to end this session without, on the record, saying to the Google News Initiative that by far, you are the best thing that has happened to the black press of America. Google News Initiative. And then some have said, when the Congress and others are trying to attack Google, a lot of us are silent. So I spoke out in support on behalf of the NNPA for the Google News Initiative. Because to me, support is a two-way street. We don't get support, and then when one of our leading supporters needs our help, we are silent. We have to be bold enough to say we have a relationship that's worth us being publicly attested to. So I just want to say to Casey and to all your colleagues at Google, particularly the Google News Initiative, when you go out this door, you see all the front pages of our press sponsored by Google News Initiative. It's very expensive to do that. And so we don't take it lightly. And sometimes I know when we have advertising, we have sponsors, and people help us do our conventions and our event, we don't take time to express our gratitude for the support that we get. So thank you on behalf of the NNPA. Lastly, Rosetta Miller Perry is the godmother of the black press. And I don't know if you've seen her special edition that's not only welcoming the NNPA to Nashville for this convention, but it's the way she does it. See, it's one thing to report the news, but it's another thing to report the news that's not only culturally sensitive, but culturally impactful. And so with this headline, and then I don't know if y'all seen down at the bottom on the front page, it's a very relevant story. So Rosetta, thank you for your courage, thank you for your boldness, and thank you for the example. We just talked about how our young people see our elders. This sister is not only one of our elders, but she's still active. You're like the Queen Latifah of the black press. So thank you.
And she was dancing like Queen Latifah last night, too. I was shy, y'all. She came up to me. She said, come on. I said, where we going? We're going to dance. I'm not worthy to dance with you, but she was down there. God bless you. Let's give her another round of applause. Just received a text. Apparently, the HBCU presidents of our four institutions in Nashville are writing an op-ed in response to affirmative action. So I texted back, as soon as they get that done, send it here so we can distribute it in our papers. We need to have that here first before it goes anywhere else. Second of all, we got a couple extra minutes. I just want to do this, Dr. Chavis. We may not get a chance to do it lunch. You all got that? Ron, did you get that slide I sent you? You didn't get it? It didn't come through? I emailed it. Check your junk. Please, check your junk mail. No? Nothing? You got it? Okay. I thought we'd do well, publishers and news people, to see Ketanji Brown Jackson's Descent, which has gone viral. Ron's going to put it up for us real quick before we go. He's going to blow it up. There. With Let Them Eat Cake obliviousness today, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces colorblindness for all by legal fiat. But deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. and having so detached itself from this country's actual past and present experiences, the court has now been lured into interfering with the crucial work that the University of North Carolina and other institutions of higher learning are doing to solve America's real-world problems. No one benefits from ignorance. Although formal race-linked legal barriers are gone, race still matters to the lived experiences of all Americans in innumerable ways, and today's ruling makes things worse, not better. The best that can be said of the majority's perspective is that it proceeds ostrich-like from the hope that preventing consideration of race will end racism. We have a woman and an African American on the Supreme Court because of the black press, because that's what we fought for, and that's very important. We lost today, but her opinion is important. Wanted y'all to share that with you all. Everybody good? Let's give Google another round of applause. Let's give Dr. Chavis a round of applause. I'm going to do right now. Claudette is intimidating. I have not forgotten I was getting to it. Okay, I've been stressing the C-Vent app. How many of you have downloaded it finally? That's all? Y'all putting my life on the line. Y'all know you putting my life on the line, right? Please download it. And when you download it, see, this is one of the most important notifications you're going to get, to do a survey at the conclusion of each presentation, at the conclusion of each panel. So go and download it. Go back and do the surveys quickly, please, ma'am, please, sir, and let's get that done. Yes, Dr. Vogel. You having trouble? Are people having trouble downloading? Okay, let's do this real quick. Let's do a little primer real quick. Let's do this real quick. I'm just going to show you how to do it. What? I'm sorry? There are instructions at the desk. So we're going to, and in their emails, Claudette is saying in the tone that she's saying it, it was in your emails. So this, we're not going to have a conversation. She's saying it's not in the emails, Claudette. Okay, so oh, that's right. Everybody's not getting the code back. Yeah, some is texting the code too, some is emailing. So why don't we do this? Let's adjourn. We've got a few extra minutes, and we'll try to help people and go out to the desk and get it done. We're going to move back to Hall E for lunch, okay? Great. All of our panels were great. Were they not? Reed with a rapper gonna give me some Jordans like they got? Got some kicks coming? I negotiate, huh? Say what? All right. Appreciate y'all. See you next door.